Hello and welcome to part 2 of this massive sketchbook tour where I'm showing you around every single one of my sketchbooks and what I use them for. In part 1 I shared 5 different sketchbooks that I use when I draw outside or when I sketch from photos of nature in my studio, and some other things too, like concept art. Part 1 is already available here in case you haven't seen that one yet, but you can still watch this video before you go to part 1. These videos are independent from each other, they're just showing 2 different aspects of my art practice. In today's video, I'm going to be focusing on these 5 sketchbooks that I use for character designs, project concepts, and for a variety of ideas that I tend to explore inside my studio. So let's get to it. My name is Alex, I'm a professional artist, welcome to my channel. The first sketchbook I'll be sharing with you today is this one. This is what I use every time I'm working on a new character design. Then I want to show you this one, which I also use for character designs and project concepts, but in this one I also use color. Next, I'll show you around this sketchbook, which is dedicated to a single specific project, and it's filled with ideas and concept art related to that. After that, we'll have a look inside this one, which is my newest sketchbook of all. I made this one myself, and the idea was to use it to explore mainly abstract ideas. And finally, I'll show you this little sketchbook, which I use very casually, either doodling in front of the TV or when I'm out and about. So let's have a look inside the first sketchbook for this tour. I bought this sketchbook quite a few years ago, but I didn't start using it until early 2024, and I'll get back to that topic in a bit. But the sketchbook sat on my shelf for years and years until at some point I just decided to start using it for rough character designs. On the first few pages of this sketchbook, I did a lot of tests and experiments with different mediums just to see what the paper could handle, and as it turned out, unfortunately it wasn't a whole lot. The paper is super thin. I think it's something like 70 GSM, which is thinner than even regular copier paper. So it can only really handle dry mediums like graphite, charcoal, and colored pencils. And that limited my use of this sketchbook quite a bit as a mixed media artist who often use watercolor as the first layer. So the only real use for me for this sketchbook was to do character designs, and for that it works well enough. More or less, all of the character sketches in the sketchbook are connected to a personal project of mine, either a project that I'm currently working on, have worked on in the past, or that I'm planning to work on in the future. I write a lot of fiction, sometimes as novels and sometimes as comics or graphic novels, and whenever I'm working on a story, I like to explore the world and the characters visually through sketches and mood boards and stuff like that. For example, there are a few pages in the sketchbook where I was brainstorming some character designs for the comic book that I'm currently working on. It's a dark fairy tale, which I started working on at the beginning of the summer in 2025, and I honestly can't wait to share more about this project with you. I'm super excited about it. If you're curious, you can already take a sneak peek at some of the artwork and even some finished pages of part 1 over on my Instagram, which I will link in the description. When I do character designs, that's basically the only time I sketch in monochrome with just a regular pencil of some sort. That way I can focus on just the shapes and matching the right shapes to the personality and the general vibe of the character that I'm designing. It's really important to me that my characters feel just right. Sometimes I find the right design almost immediately, and other times I have to keep trying and trying for a long time before I find it. I'd also like to talk a bit about how I use color in the sketchbook, because as you might have noticed, I use different colors almost from page to page, and there's a reason for that. For one, I don't really like to do sketches in black and white just as a personal preference. I think graphite drawings can look truly amazing, but color is really important to me as an artist. It's one of my primary ways of expressing myself and really feeling my art. And sketching with something like a regular gray graphite pencil somehow just takes the joy out of it for me. I guess in a way you could say that I need color to access my own creativity. At the same time, drawing in full color can sometimes add an unnecessary layer of complexity and just take more time in general when doing character design, because I feel like there's definitely a design phase that comes before going into the colors. So the clever little workaround that I found somewhere along the way is to use colored graphite when I sketch characters. I tend to associate different characters with a specific color, so if I'm working on a design, drawing that character in their color can help me find the right look for them a bit faster. I have a bunch of different pencils with erasable colored graphite, including a really nice set from Derwent, which I made a full unboxing and review of on my channel, and you can check that out here if you're curious about these pencils yourself and if you're maybe thinking about getting them. In the video, I test everything from regular swatching to how well you can erase them, and also how they look when you mix them with water. But going back to the story behind the sketchbook, as I mentioned, I bought it many years ago, but I didn't really use it until just a few years ago. The thing was that at the time when I bought it, I still hadn't quite figured out how to keep a sketchbook and how that even fit into my art practice in general. So I kind of just bought the sketchbook hoping that I would use it without actually knowing that I would use it or even how I would use it. I recently published a blog post over on my website where I talk about my own personal struggle as an art student with learning how to keep a sketchbook and the little tips and tricks that I learned along the way that eventually helped me work it all out. So if you've ever struggled with keeping a sketchbook yourself, if you feel like you're never quite comfortable with it, I'll leave a link in the description for you. Hopefully there's some ideas and hard-won life lessons in there that might help you move past some of the things that you're struggling with. I would also love to hear from you in the comments if you've ever struggled with keeping a sketchbook. And also if you've struggled in the past, but you found a way to overcome that struggle, tell us about it. I think it's a really common struggle among artists, and your specific experience might be exactly what someone else might need to hear to get on the right track on their own journey. Let's move on to this sketchbook, which I started midway through 2025. This one I use for sketching characters as well, but the paper in the sketchbook is much thicker and more durable than in the previous one, so I can also sketch with mixed media and colors. I started this sketchbook while I was in the concept art stage of making my comic book, and so far the only thing in it is related to that project. I had just finished doing the rough character concepts in the previous sketchbook that I just showed you, and then I reached a point where I really felt that I needed to explore the world and the characters in color, and so that's how I started using this one. I intend to share a lot more about my comic here on YouTube sometime soon, but so far there's just not been enough time between work, making the actual comic book, and creating content for this channel. But as I mentioned, I do share a lot more about my comic book on Instagram, so if you're interested, you can head on over to my Instagram page. I would love to make a video in the future where I share the entire process of making a final comic page, the different phases of creating a comic book, and just all the strategies that I've developed over the years to make it easier and even possible to undertake a project as massive as making a comic book. Next, I'd like to introduce you to this sketchbook, which I use to create concept art related to a single specific project. Because this project is still unannounced, I'm not ready to share too much about it just yet, but I thought I'd at least give you a sneak peek of some of the early character designs, environment concepts, and even a little bit of storyboarding. I always have a million ideas in my head and a long list of projects that I want to do. But unfortunately, there is only so much time available and I can only really handle one project at a time. But I do keep a mental list of potential future projects that I can dive into once my current one is all done. But I also don't necessarily push any creative projects away while they're still on the waitlist either. I've learned over the years that having all these ideas in my head at the same time is just how my creativity works. And so I've found ways to work with it instead of against it. And to me, that means that sometimes when an idea comes knocking, even though I'm busy with another project, I still allow myself to pause even a little bit to explore that idea before returning to my original project. It may not be the most efficient way of working, but it's the most sustainable and creatively fulfilling way for me to work. This is a relatively new sketchbook, probably the newest one in the entire pile. I use it every once in a while to do some abstract sketches on those days when I just really want to create something, but I just feel too tired to decide what to create or to look for references. In here, I only care about color and play. There's no plan, no direction, just reactions to visual input. I will take out my paints and use whatever color speaks to me in the moment, and with everything that I apply to the paper, I respond with a new action and a new decision. But I don't necessarily work actively or regularly in the sketchbook. Like I said, this is something that I'll pick up from time to time when I feel like it. Recently, I also started playing around with pastel crayons in the sketchbook too. Pastels are a medium that I've largely left unexplored due to a lack of personal interest. But recently I was doing a drawing exercise together with a few artists that I work together with, and somehow, for that occasion, using pastels just felt right. After playing around with the pastels a few times, I feel really motivated and curious to explore the medium more in the future, and especially what happens when I use pastels for abstract works. This sketchbook was something I got a few years back in preparation for an inspiration trip. I was mainly going to take reference photos of a bunch of different places on this trip, but I figured it would also be really nice to have a small pocket-sized sketchbook for making some quick observation and idea sketches on location. In the end, I didn't have much time to sketch on the trip since I was prioritizing taking photos, but sometime later I picked the sketchbook back up and started using it for some more casual sketching on the go. I most commonly use it for quick doodles while traveling by train or to capture images that stand out to me while watching TV. I actually think that most of what's in here is just from doodling by the TV, which is a really fun and great exercise in observation and speed. When you watch a TV show, the images move and rarely stay in one place for very long, which means that you only have a few seconds to scribble down a rough idea of what you're seeing. Doing this with ink is also a great exercise in embracing imperfections, because you can't erase anything. When you put down a line in ink, it's gonna stay there, and you just have to find a way to be okay with it, even when things go wrong, and just keep going with what you have. Sometimes I also use the sketchbook to doodle while playing board games, especially when funny things happen in the game, or when you have to wait a very long time for other players to strategize and make their move. It's really nice to have this kind of low-pressure sketchbook where all I need to do is grab a fountain pen instead of having to decide on what tools and colors to bring with me. The paper in the sketchbook isn't the best for how I use it though. The paper's pretty thin, and although it can definitely hold a fair amount of ink, I find that when I go really heavy with the fountain pen, it does bleed through to the other side. It's also a little annoying to have these tear-off pages because it makes it really difficult to get the pages entirely flat and to draw across a full spread. It makes the already tall A6 format feel even taller, and like there's a large portion of the page that can't really be used. But apart from those drawbacks, it's been a really handy pocket-sized sketchbook to carry with me out and about. And that's all 5 sketchbooks that I have to share with you today. If you haven't seen part 1 already, go and check that out. In the video, I share 5 very different sketchbooks, which I use mainly for sketching on location and from photos that I've taken. If you've enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up and leaving a comment. I would love to hear about your experience with keeping a sketchbook, what struggles you've had, and how you've managed to work around them. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and I will see you in the next one.